comienzo. También aprovecho para agradecer al IEMET un año más que nos haya permitido ser parte, ¿no?, de esta aula mediterránea y poder, pues, tener la posibilidad de espacios de discusión académica como el que hoy nos reúne aquí. Well, thank you very much, Sebnem. It's a great pleasure to be here. It's Sebnem Koser Akçapar. She's full professor in sociology at Ankara Social Sciences University. She's also the director of ASBU Center of Global Migration Research. It's an interdisciplinary center of research set in Ankara. Previously, Sebnem Koser Akçapar, she was working at Koç University in Istanbul as a senior research fellow and executive board member at Migration Research Center, MiReKoc, and also the director of Center for Asian Studies. She's also associate member at Asia Center at University of Sussex. She completed her PhD in Belgium, then she moved to the United States at the Institute for the Study of International Migration at Georgetown University. There she taught different courses on gender and migration, Muslim immigrants in Western Europe and North America, politics of migration and integration problems. She's a reputed scholar now for her works in the fields of sociology of migration, sociology and family. She was later also the director of Center for Eastern Mediterranean Studies at this university. She also worked as visiting professor at Jamia Millia University and South Asian University in New Delhi, India. And there she studied the diaspora and transnationalism, as well as topics concerning social stratification in Asia. She has published a lot of articles in peer-reviewed academic journals on different aspects of migration, and all these topics I have told. Her research areas include also sociology of religion, marriage migration, forced migration, labor migration, high-skilled migration, social networks, transnationalism, diaspora, and political mobilization of migrants. Her current projects include nowadays migrant entrepreneurs from Asia, Rohingya refugees in India, Bangladesh, integration processes of Syrian refugees in Turkey and other Middle East countries, and also topics related to discrimination and social exclusion of migrants, also in Turkey and European Union countries. It's a great pleasure to have the possibility today to listen to Professor Sebnem, and also the title, no? The title, the interesting topic she's going to talk, irregular migration in the Mediterranean, border policies, and also with a gender perspective. So thank you very much for being here again, and we can start with the conference, and then we can discuss and with the assistants. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you for the very nice introduction, Sonia. It's really a pleasure to be here addressing you, such a lively audience as I see. Excuse me that I'm presenting today in English, but hopefully if I stay in Barcelona long enough, I can I can present this in Catalan or Spanish. And today, you know, Irregular, are you all from Spain? No, where are you from? Mexico. One? Italy, okay. Italy, lovely. Peru. Cuba. Wow, okay. What else? Huh? Brazil. So, you see, they're all different nationalities and great. No Turkish student yet. Well, but so you're also familiar with this topic, I believe, irregular migration, right? So it's not a foreign topic, which is. So when we see irregular migrations, of course, today I'm not going to talk about Mexico-US border, which is which I also have experience in. I visited the border a couple of times, Mexican-US border, I also did field work there. But today I'm going to focus on the Mediterranean, irregular migration in the Mediterranean, the border politics, but also how borders are, in fact, gendered spaces. Okay, I'm going to explain in a minute what do I mean by gendered spaces, like borders and becoming gendered spaces. But first, let me ask you another question, if I may. So what comes into your mind? What kind of an image comes to your mind when I say migration, illegal, Mediterranean? Let's Google your brains. Yes, what kind of an image comes to your mind?
People crossing the Mediterranean being helped by NGOs.
Okay, that's a humanitarian approach. Good. SAR, right? Search and rescue operations. And what else? Okay. Well, which is usually blocked, right? Or restricted and criminalized even. What else comes to, yes? Indeed, people crossing in very difficult conditions or dying, right? And while doing so. So, in fact, these are some of the images when you Google migration Mediterranean illegal, you know, so boats, sinking boats, people drowning, or just running in the fields after crossing, or trying to cross actually, or rescued by some NGOs. So these are unfortunately images because irregular migration is the new trend in the Mediterranean. Has it always been so? Yes. No, not really. But the outline of my presentation is that first I'm going to talk about irregular migration in the region and some maps and statistics, but then I'm going to talk about migration, clash of migration narratives, right? And which revolves around deterrence, but also humanitarianism. And then, of course, you know, if you bear with me, I will try to conceptualize as borders and boundaries. And the imagining of borders and boundaries. And then last but not least, I'm going to talk about borders as gendered spaces by giving two examples. I have more examples, but I'm going to give today two only from the case studies. And of course, human history is the history of human mobility, right? And of course, the mobility in the Mediterranean has always been the case. And it's the normal social fabric, in fact, in the region. But now, as I said, there's a new border regime. And what is this new border regime? It's restrictions, right? It's like containment, and also externalization of migration. You know about externalization of migration, but even now the asylum applications are carried out in other countries, okay? Like England, for example, or the UK is now externalizing its asylum applications in Rwanda. At least there is a, you know, it's not actually accepted yet in the parliament, but there is this, this trend. And also, you know, Australia has been doing the same for some time in Papua New Guinea. And then detention centers were created again outside the borders, right? In other countries, in third countries. So when we say irregular migration in the Mediterranean, of course, let's look at the map already. There are maybe three main routes, right? Which is the central Mediterranean route. We have Italian students, and from Libya to Italy, and then the eastern Mediterranean route, Turkey to Greece mostly, right, to Greek islands, and then we have the western Mediterranean route, Spain to Morocco. But then we have not only, we have different nationalities. right? Not only Turkish people going to Greek islands, right? Irregular migration, but a bunch of different nationalities, right? When we look at central Mediterranean route, for example, we see, yes, Libyans, of course, but we also see some sub-Saharan Africans, right? Also in Morocco, yes, we see some Moroccan nationalities, but also, you know, at least 100 different nationalities. In Turkey, the trend is also the case. We see Pakistani, but mostly Afghanistan, Iraqi, Syrian, and maybe sometimes Iranians. You know, depending of the political situation of the country of origin, of course, you know, in economic and political situation, we see a very sharp increase in the recent year, you know, from irregular flows from Afghanistan. And why? Because the Taliban takeover of the country, right? And we see an increasing trend, for example, also from Iran. Why? Because of the, you know, what's happening politically also, but also economically in the country. And of course, then this irregular migration, then we are also seeing the term transit migration. And you know what is transit migration like? Like Italy, again, Mediterranean countries like Italy, Turkey, and Spain, they're also transit countries. Like Mexico is, although not in the Mediterranean, but another transit country. And why? Because people, I mean, migrants come to those places and they use this, you know, route in order to go further west. Right? So that's the transit migration. And we see an increasing trend in the transit migration, but we see also more and more stranded migrants or stranded refugees. So these traditionally, in a way, after 1990s, let's say, you know, these countries have become transit countries, but they also become, in a way, more turned into destination countries. Why? Because the West or the other EU countries decided to close its stores, or they started to apply more restrictive policies. And of course, when we say, I talk about externalization a bit, but then and the other part of externalization is that, you know, keep the refugees, keep the migrants at bay, I'll pay you money kind of deals, right? Externalization. And I'll give you examples later on. And of course, there are existing migrant smuggling networks in those regions. And there's a very good book. If you haven't read it, I'll recommend it. It's a very anthropological but also journalistic capture of what is going on from Senegal and Mali to Ceuta and Melilla, mostly North African, I mean, Spanish enclaves in North Africa. And written by Anderson, it's called Illegality, Inc., Clandestine Migration and Business of Bordering Europe. So he actually, by following these irregular routes that the migrants take, he follows the path and realizes, actually showcases the link between the European paychecks, the smuggling networks, and you know, how one route is closed, the other routes open, you know, in a way. I also write in the IOM publication in 2016, right after the so-called refugee crisis of 2015, and on Turkey and migrant smuggling, how migrants themselves, or even the refugees themselves, have become a part of this already existing smuggling networks. And that's quite a natural case. These are the main routes before 2005, and this is the actually migration across the Mediterranean. You know, as you see, in 2015, the numbers are reached more than 1 million, and this was the alarming trend for the EU, right? So 1 million, and this is the registered successful cases, by the way, okay? Many people, of course, as you can imagine, and as you see in the images, die while crossing the routes. And then, of course, gradually, because of certain policies, more restrictive measures, but mainly because of the EU-Turkey statement or agreement on migration, the numbers decreased gradually. And then, of course, in 2020, well, because of the pandemic, we seem to forget now because we endured this pandemic, and the numbers also dropped drastically. But when we look at the Frontex data and the number of illegal border crossings of last year, to 2021 and 2022, we see some decrease in Western Mediterranean region, right? But 51% increase when compared to previous years, and in Central Mediterranean route, but also more than 100% increase in the Eastern Mediterranean route. Okay, and that also includes some of the land crossings like Western Balkan and the Eastern land borders, as you can see. So this irregular migration is not going anywhere. As I said, this is a new trend, and maybe now we can discuss why it is a new trend. And of course, the Missing Persons Project of International Organization for Migration, as you are well aware of, you know, more than 25,000 people missed. You know, they either, lost their lives, but they are the missing migrants. These are the recorded numbers in the Mediterranean since 2014. But of course, when you visit their website, it says directly, oh, look, these are not the exact numbers. Okay, these are the numbers only we can, know. And there are probably numbers are much more than what is already registered in this project. And of course, Aylan Kurdi is, maybe you remember this image because I'm sure it was also shown, and this is a very disturbing image. I'm sorry, but is it maybe taking up from Michel Foucault? Is it necropolitics? Are we becoming numb to this missing numbers, missing that? Because when I said 25,000 and probably the number is doubled, nobody said, wow. Okay, so we are becoming, in a way, numb also to the idea that these people are losing their lives while trying to find a better future. So, which maybe we can take up from Foucault, necropolitics. Like, in a way, migration and border controls have given way to this necropolitical brutality, but also the acceptance of that as normal and of irregular migrants. But of course, when we look at migration discourses, and it's the same thing also here in Spain, we see that clash of humanitarian and deterrence narratives, right? What is the humanitarian narrative? That's the safe and legal pathways are closed. That's why people are risking their lives in order to cross borders, and sea rescues have become more difficult and criminalized. And the EU usually bears responsibility, or at least co-responsibility, for the huge death toll in the Mediterranean. So that's the more humanitarian discourse. But versus there is this deterrence narrative, which is like the irregular migration poses great risks for the country, for the nation states, but for the country. Why? Because it poses risk for cultural risks, economic risks, social threats, changing the demographics, changing the, religious, what have you, the cultural landscape of the nation. And of course, what we see as a result is secularization and more secularization of migration and inability. Of course, they claim that they're unable, nation states are unable to accommodate these new arrivals, because we don't know when it is going to end and how many more people are going to come, right? And therefore, Italy signed agreements with the Libyan Coastal Guard, and in Spain with Morocco, right? And there's this EU-Turkey agreement of 2016, and etc. But let's see, this doesn't really explain why the problem still persists, right? So why do we have this problem? As I said at the beginning, that irregular migration has become the new trend in the Mediterranean. Because other than the clash of discourses, this deterrence versus the humanitarian discourse or narrative, there is also the clash of labor market needs and high politics or populism, the clash. And neoliberal economy grows much faster than populist restrictions, but it is also in structural crisis, in a way. So some scholars call this fortress capitalism. Fortress capitalism, and controlling, which means that capitalism trying to control this global working class in repressive but also in violent ways. And some other scholars call this is the 21st century fascism and a political meta project by alliance of political power and transnational capital. Okay? So, and then of course this reminds me of Hegel and master and slave politics. Oh, you must say this is so old, because slavery has been abolished, right? But then I think, there is it's changed its form. It's not completely lost, but it's still valid in certain, in certain ways. And it only translates into new power relations. And but there is always a constant negotiation also. So border, what is in a word, and of course borders, and here I would like to underline borders and boundaries, and how borders and boundaries are used interchangeably also. But does it really mean the same thing, where perhaps borders are legal territorial spaces, boundaries are limit lines of collectivities, some more social maybe, like in a way they also distinguish us versus them in a way, these boundaries. And it's not, of course, only based on political values that people draw this collectivity, boundaries, but there are different positionings also based on gender, based on social class, based on, I don't know, race, ethnicity, etc. So state territorial borders are one major way in which collectivity boundaries are also imagined, and dividing people into those who belong to the nation and who don't belong to the nation in a way, without us even noticing. And so there is usually this difference between official discourse and popular perceptions in everyday life. We don't recognize it immediately, but if we think deep enough, it is right there in front of us. And so there's also this, in a way, underlines the paradoxical quality of borders and boundaries. So if I refer to Benedict Anderson, since I'm sure you are aware of it, imagined communities. So in a way, nation states are imagined communities. And if I quote from Anderson himself, nations are imagined communities because the members of even as the smallest nation will never know most of their fellow members, meet them, or even hear of them. Yet in the minds of each lives the image of their communion. Okay, so it's such an abstract form of community, which is also based on an abstract sense of imagined collectivity. So that's about Anderson. So again, nation states are almost like imagined communities, but then how are nation states or state borders constructed after colonialism? Any idea? A river, a mountain, Oh, sometimes the sea, yes, UK, Australia, these are easy peasy. But how are nation states, how are our borders are constructed? You know, I can remember my first time going to Gibraltar. I said, what? Sorry, but I was told Gibraltar is a little island of a little bit. It's right there in the middle of Spain, and oh, you need a passport to enter. I said, okay, since I'm Turkish, I need also a visa, right? So, well, but think about Kashmir, think about Pakistan, India, maybe a little beyond Europe. These borders are usually drawn very hastily, right? So it's not a formalization of national imaginings of homeland, but rather through diplomatic negotiations, right, on the table. Usually people, and if you travel, you go to border areas, border cities, you interview people, if you're a sociologist, anthropologist, I don't know, I think political scientists also, or international relations, they also use this qualitative methodology these days. So you ask people, what do you feel? Because there it's another country. Of course, it's much different probably in Europe, because you have Schengen free, but in other countries, then it's more difficult, right? So people usually live, for example, they say, oh, you know, overnight, people come and said, this is the border, and then some of our relatives on the other side, and we are here on this side. And this happened between Syria and Turkey, by the way. Okay, this happened also between, in other countries, Pakistan, India, etc. So people are usually realize that they also live in limbo, right? They are neither here nor there. They need passports or visas in order to visit relatives just 1 kilometer or even 200 meters away, you know, which is another country, another state. But then something else also happening, which I realized in my interviews in Mexico or in the US, but also in Turkey, but also in southern Spain, that people, the migrants, they say they claim what is already theirs in a way after migration. This has been the territory where their ancestors have been living for centuries. In a way, like when the Syrian crisis happened in 2011, and it's, congratulations, it's another protracted case now, and with no solution on site. But the thing is, when people come from Aleppo to Gaziantep, another border city in Turkey, they said, look, Gaziantep was the city just like Aleppo, and looks like Aleppo, even some Arabic-speaking Turks there, and it was a part of during the Ottoman Empire, it was a part of Aleppo, Antep, which is now today's Turkey. It was part of the Aleppo governorate, okay, province, Aleppo province, so the whole region. And so in a way, they are living in that, original homeland in a way. So, but borders also play a central role in the discourse of nation building, claims making, but also changing borders is a big no-no. So it is the casus belli, right? What is casus belli? It's right to wage war, And so, and of course, states maintain borders in a variety of ways. How do you imagine a border now? Fenced, patrolled, marked, no sign at all. There are different sorts. Here's the Turkish-Iranian border, for example. There we have a new wall, which is kilometers long, by the way, and there's soon going to be a new fence, actually, wire on top of it. And this is actually, this part here, I cannot show now. Here, this is actually the Iranian patrol. Iranian guards, and this is the Turkish side. Okay, so and this is the new Turkish-Greek border. They made it out of steel, 140 kilometers of steel, etc. And of course, then when we look at borders, people are trying to cross, but people sometimes, and most of the time, they're not able to cross. And this is the IDP camp, internal displaced people, right? IDP, in Syria, near the Turkish border in Sarmada district, Idlib. You know, when we look, I mean, of course, we can take up examples from other countries, but again, when we look at Syria, there are at least 1.52 million people who are, if the gates are open, like it was a couple of years ago, 2 million more people can enter, okay? And of course, you can imagine at least half of those people would like to have this aspiration to come to Europe. Maybe not stay in Turkey, but come to Europe. And again, Iranian border, if the borders are open, and there are another 2 million Afghanistan nationals waiting at the border, right at the border. Okay, so again, migration pressures are quite high, also in Spain. And this is Pazarkule, which happened right before the pandemic started, actually, and the people of different nationalities and men and women, children, they flocked to the Turkish-Greek border in the aspiration to cross the border to Greece, but couldn't, and faced the brutality of the Greek police, I'm afraid. And this is, and again, a Turkish-Iranian border near Van, in the Turkish side, of course, and this is the cemetery of irregular migrants. You see, there are no names written on them because they don't have any identity, right? Or they don't carry their passports. If they carry their passports, you know, but they write Pakistani, okay, in numbers. So this is a common cemetery in the you know, in the eastern region in Turkey, eastern border, and we have the same thing also in the western border in Izmir. And of course, here maybe borders are also imagined in different ways, shaped by political and social context, as you imagine, but while crossing borders, people also cross boundaries. You know, remember we make the distinction borders and boundaries, but I argue here that when people cross borders, they also cross boundaries, okay? So, but then I'm going to come to that boundaries, borders, differentiation by giving examples from the case studies. But then I would like to mention also how and why borders are also gender spaces. You know, I'm not going to go into feminist theory, but you know that women are also on the move. They also cross borders, became part of all migration flows, including irregular migration flows, right? And since membership in a nation is also gendered, women also symbolize borders and nations' honor as a metaphor. Huh? I'm not sure if that's the case in Spain. You have such an expression like the borders are honor. In a way, we have this saying in Turkey. So in a way, borders are likened to females. Huh? It's fragile, huh? Yet nice because it's the territory, but it should be protected at all costs, as if it's the honor of the whole society, right? And but it is men, like usually the soldiers, military men, right, or patrol, who protect borders, hence the female honor. And you can see this in, you know, in different examples in Turkey, like hudut namus, like the border is the honor of society, etc. These are from different border towns in the eastern Turkey. So now I would like to give you examples maybe to make it more clear how borders are gendered spaces, but then how when people cross borders, they also cross boundaries, right? More as social spaces, not only territorial spaces, but also social gendered spaces, etc. So I'll give you one example from Amir. Of course, I'm using pseudonyms to protect their real identity. So he's a gay Syrian man from Aleppo. So when the clashes started in 2012, I think, and he was even before the civil war erupted in Syria, he was having lots of problems with his own sexuality. He was forced to get married. He didn't want that. He thinks he thought there was something wrong with him, and he couldn't figure out what exactly. Well, simply he was gay. But he never had the courage to share his sexual orientation with his family. In fact, it was a taboo, right? He couldn't, not to his own family, not to his, friends, etc. So when, in 2012, he first went to Lebanon, and because he had some relatives also there in Lebanon, sister. And then he first went to Egypt, and when there was this, revolution in Egypt, he flew again, and this time came to Istanbul. In a way, he told me that Istanbul was like always the place I wanted to live in my whole life, right? In a way, but I never thought I would come to Istanbul like this, as a refugee. But then when he came to Istanbul, again, he didn't come out yet, right? But he learned about this Turkish NGO bringing together LGBTQI people, Turkish and Syrian origin, on Sundays during tea and talk. And then they shared their experiences and troubles. So he started to go there just to listen. And then soon enough, he decided to come out to this group of people, at this NGO, and in a way he said it was, of course, a free environment compared to Syria in Turkey, but he was still facing some kind of social work because he was living in a way where the Syrian refugees were heavily located, so he couldn't come out directly, but he only came out to his sister. But interestingly enough, he was also very devout and practicing Muslim. Okay, and when I asked him, "Do you see any problems with your religious identity and your sexual orientation?" He said, "There is nothing in the Quran that suggests that Muslims shouldn't be gay, okay, or they cannot be, or gay people shouldn't be Muslims. There's nothing in the Quran." He was he was also referring to the Quran, some surahs there, that how God is all embracing regardless of who you are. So, in a way, but soon afterwards, social media and his own, social contacts helped him to get in touch with the Syrians living in other parts of Europe. And finally, like last year, he was resettled in one of the North European countries, and because there was this vulnerability criteria of the UNHCR. So you see, he crossed borders: first Lebanon, Egypt, Turkey, and then came to Turkey, and then in Turkey he also crossed another boundary. This time his own sexual orientation, identity. Another case, and I'm going to actually stop in a moment, in 2 minutes. And another case is Rabia. Again, I'm using a pseudonym. And he's a young Afghan woman of Pashtun origin. And she migrated, she contacted through her cousin. She contacted a migrant smuggler, and in Kabul, Afghanistan. And because she lost her husband, right? And after losing her husband, her family, I mean her husband's family, late husband's family, forced her to get married to husband's brother. So, I mean, she rejected this because she didn't want to get married. The father-in-law, this is called a levirate marriage, which is quite common in, you know, in certain clans in Afghanistan, especially Pashtun. And so, so she crossed the border first from Afghanistan, then first to Iran, and then from Iran to Turkey, mostly on foot or on horseback. And of course, she said she was one of the only, the females were very few, of course, among the smugglers, among the people smuggled at the time. And she was the only person traveling alone as a female. So she faced lots of problems with the smugglers. Smugglers are often described as heroes, right? I mean, yeah, okay, they're not doing it for free, but they are also exploiting, you know, migrants, you know, especially women. So, so finally, I mean, she escaped anyway from this harassment. But and when she came to Turkey, she applied for asylum, got international protection, and settled in a small city, mostly consisting of Iranians under international protection. And of course she was alone, and she was afraid because she was also escaping from her family, right? And she didn't know whom to trust, etc. There are a few NGOs helping those refugees in this small city. And then soon enough, through her, again, new social networks, through these Iranians, she became acquainted with this evangelical church. I don't know, evangelism is probably not very prevalent, dominant here in Spain, but it's very also, evangelism or Pentecostalism especially is very, how can I say, conservative in a way, right? In a way, family values are very important. There's gender segregation in a way. Yes, they dance together, but, you know, so in a way, it's a continuation. It can be a continuation of your own heritage or your cultural values, in a way. So she finds some kind of, in a way, peace with this new fictive kin, which was established inside this evangelical church together with the Iranians. Why Iranians? Because they speak the same language. Dari and Farsi is quite similar, in fact, intelligible. And of course, when locals learned that as a Muslim she converted to, you know, Christianity, and especially Pentecostalism, of course, they didn't know much about it. I mean, they convert, but they didn't know much about the different denominations in Christianity. They didn't know the difference between Catholicism, Protestantism, or the difference between, I don't know, Lutheran church and evangelism, okay? I mean, those refugees. So they converted, and there is this show. She converted, and then she was even baptized. And then, she, last time we talked, she was to be resettled in a third country in Canada, actually, through church sponsorship. So you see, again, how she passed borders, cross borders, but also crossed another, this time, religious, but also, I think, identity. So, migration policies, well, okay, where can I start? I don't want to dictate things, but, you know, any good migration policy should consider political economy, right? And labor exploitation of resources, and of course outsourcing in the global north. Why? Because most of the time people are moving, or they had to move because of this exploitation, and because in the global north, you know, they feel that they have to sustain global in the global south. They feel that they have to sustain global south. Global north. You understand what I'm saying? So, you know, and then if I will quote from Gargi, restrictive border regimes aim to regulate structural contradiction between the negative consequences of capitalist overaccumulation on one hand, and the fundamental obstinacy, stubbornness, right, and relational autonomy of the global working class on the other hand. Because no matter what we do, no matter what the restrictive policies, restrictive measures, people will still be on the move. And but then, I think more importantly, we have to open safe and regular routes for migrants. But then, don't think that people are not responding to these restrictive measures or the new border policies. Despite all restrictions, yes, they cross embody borders, but also boundaries, and even transcending them. Here, maybe since you're all graduate students, I would like to underline here, you can look at perhaps Michel de Certeau, especially the practice of everyday life, strategies versus tactics that migrants employ, and or maybe Amartya Sen's capability approach and the agency. Right? How agency is described, that the ability to take action, the power to change even within oneself. Well, I conclude here, and I'm very pleased. I'll be pleased if you ask questions or make comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your brilliant conference. We have learned a lot of concepts and notions that really are very useful to understand all these processes. We can start with questions, comments.
Also in Spanish, we can translate.
Here.
Thank you. I have a question regarding the gender spaces theme. I do not understand why you say it's a gender space, given that both cases you gave us can be related to a boy, for example, like a non-gay boy or a boy in the case of the woman.
Yeah, good question. Of course, in my own fieldwork, I also give examples from men and also unaccompanied minors. So, I mean, of course, we look at gender not from a female perspective only, but the interaction between the two sexes, right? The female, male, or, you know, or LGBTQI, whatever. But I use, I mean, of course, men, single men, they also travel across the borders, but they have different experiences. What I mean by gendered borders or gender spaces, I'm not referring to female migration only, but I'm referring to gendered experiences that people have, whether they are LGBTQI, whether they are women or single women, let's say, whether they're traveling with their families, or with children, unaccompanied minors, or, you know, these are different experiences.
Yeah, I mean, I get that. I mean, I was just wondering because I thought that both cases did not seem like a different experience for me, but I mean, I get it. Thank you.
No, yeah, I will hopefully write more in detail when I mention about other cases too. You will see the difference, I mean.
Yeah, forced marriage. The second case, it's a female linguistic. The case of
Hi, thanks for the conference. It was really interesting. I was wondering about the situation of the migrants in the Mediterranean Sea. Yeah, like it seems kind of a big chaos, if I can put it this way. But where should we put all of our efforts, or like where should we start to contribute to, like, I don't know, improve the situation just a little bit, like from the NGOs or like from the states, the politics, I don't know, like it's a really big
What is your
situation.
discipline?
Right now I'm studying international studies, but I have a background in occupational therapy, so from health, a little bit, yeah.
Okay. Well, you can, I think young people can help in many different ways, depending on your interests. You can be a volunteer in an NGO, or be, or active in a rescue operation, right? Or also work as a therapist, because most of the time these people are facing trauma. And also post-traumatic stress disorder. There are many health issues. We mostly think about healthy people, of course, young and healthy people, right? But there are also elderly and those actually with chronic illnesses, from a health perspective. Again, when we talk about health, we can also talk about biopolitics, how, again, access to health. It's not actually the same for everyone. There are so many things you can concentrate on what you care most about. And also your strength. I was a social worker before I became an academic, by the way. And first I had my master's degree, and second master's degree, and then I was still a social worker, and then I said, okay, well, 2 master's degree probably enough. Let me do a PhD this time. And then, of course, you cannot be both. At least I couldn't be both. So I had to choose in between. So I chose academia. But I'm still very much involved in with the NGO work also, as a volunteer, let's say.
Thank you so much for your presentation. My question is about what are some tangible, concrete policies you think that nations or the EU Commission can put into place to create more legal channels for migrants to cross that would help offset irregular routes? Or any currently in the works? I'm not sure if there's anything currently being proposed.
Yes, Global Compact for Migration, right? Which was signed in Morocco a couple of years ago, and safe, orderly migration, which is also there. There is also Global Compact of Refugees, how asylum seeking is a human right. But when we look at the situation in the world, that people cannot even claim or submit an asylum, right? And they cannot even go there. They're considered irregular migrants or illegals. So we have to change the system, definitely. Okay, most probably, I don't know what, Sonia, you think, but the UN system is important, yes, but it's not working enough. Like UNHCR. Yeah, they're doing very important work, but as I said, they're not doing enough, or they cannot do enough. NGOs, they're doing a lot of things, definitely. Lots of humanitarian agencies out there, definitely. But despite Amnesty International, despite human rights organizations, despite what has been written and said, it's about populism and populist politics, after all, which is selling. Maybe you should be a politician instead of becoming an activist or something. Try to change the system from within. And it's interesting also, the left-wing parties, although they are more pro-migration, right? They become, if they get elected, they become also anti-migrant. Why? In order to, stay in power. So that's the main dilemma. And well, but also read about how the system is so decadent. You know, it's decayed. If you read the Anderson, book on illegality, Inc., you know how everything is so connected. Mm-hmm. With the European system, with the smugglers, with the migrants, and how new routes are. You know, people say, policymakers say, they make a decision, they take a decision, or an action, take an action, and maybe 5 minutes later, all the people, smugglers, migrants knew about this. So news travel fast, and people take action also. I'm not making any solutions. I'm a little pessimistic. We have to change it, and but the whole system has to change perhaps first.
Thank you.
Well, I have also
Sure,
a question.
please.
No, concerning global compact, I completely agree. European Union is not doing enough. In fact, in 2018. Even the different countries,
Yeah.
they didn't have a common position.
And it was not even a binding agreement. You know, some countries, traditional immigrant countries actually, they refrained from it. They shied from it, not even signed the document.
Yeah, of course, it's real. And concerning the distinction boundaries and borders, I think it's very interesting. And I was thinking of the possibility when we try to analyze the fact that European Union or United States, they are externalizing borders in other countries, African countries. Perhaps in order to understand these processes, European Union is talking about boundaries, not borders, because we are referring to irregular people with people that they are not irregular people. They are not here. They are just trying to cross, to transit. And all the policies is irregular people they are not irregular in a strict way. Yeah. And in this case, the discourse is concerning boundaries, not strictly borders. Mm-hmm. No, it's just a reflection.
Yeah, definitely.
Hi, I have a question relating to the first case study, because I'm very much into queer theory, LGBTIQ plus rights, and one of the things I see talking about boundaries, it's like sometimes migrants from LGBTIQ plus communities, they found when they got to the final destination, let's say he got to Northern Europe, they're one of us, to say it in a way, because they are gay men, but one of them because they are Muslims. So I don't know, I would like to know if you talk or keep in touch with Amir and how he was feeling, because sometimes they felt like kind of like this. I read a really nice and interesting book, The Pink Line, and he follows a lot of case studies of people who migrated from the global south to the
Sorry, who?
The book is called The Pink Line. I don't remember the author.
Okay.
And he's been following case studies of people who migrated, and most of the times it's like they got a place where, yes, now I can be freely gay, but I'm not accepted because I'm a Muslim. So I don't know, I would like to know if you kept in touch with Amir and how he was feeling when he arrived in his final destination.
Yes. So anyway, this is just a short snaps, of course, from it's not even my interview. So we talk a lot. We met a lot with Amir, and he stayed at least 3-4 years in Turkey, and before he was resettled just recently there. So and I also met his friends, his circle in a way. He was kind of interesting because he was very happy with his Muslim identity because he was in Turkey, right? Because most of the population is Muslim, and yet. How can I say? He was finding differences between the Turkish gay community and the Syrian and himself. How they were also very I don't know. So how they were also very how he found, for example, the Turkish gays a little too aggressive, not into real love and affection, whereas he was looking for real amour in a way, right? So, and he also made the distinction, for example, the power relations within the LGBT community. You know, how, for example, it was interesting for me also to try to understand those power dynamics. Huh? And then when he moved to Sweden, he was very excited at first, okay? And then he was very excited, he was very happy, he will start over, you know, he is going to work, he's going to study, and all that. And he's going to be free with his own identity. And then he became, this lasted like a couple of months. Afterwards, he became very lonely. Okay, because he was used to Istanbul also. He was used to Syria, you know, this communal living, chatting all the time, sharing, you know, your bread, what have you. And he didn't have that there. And the climate, of course, it's so interesting. They always complain about climate, how it is very cold here. I sometimes likened it, actually, I thought about it like how the climate, the weather, is also because of the cold personal relations. Huh? He doesn't have any family members or friends there. So, but we're still working on it. His partner stayed in Turkey. Hopefully soon enough, while they're still working on it, there's going to be a family reunification.
Thank you.
More questions?
Well, if there are no more questions, I don't want to stay between you and your dinner, which is very important. So I wish you all the best for your thesis, for your studies, and you know, you can ask Sonia for my email. We can stay in touch. If you'd like to come to Turkey, do fieldwork, carry out research, or comparative research, which is very important, right? And be my guest. Definitely the center will be open for you. And you can also work in our projects as well. Which is mostly in Turkey, but on different nationalities. So we stay in touch.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for being here today. Thank you, Sonia, so very much.
Thank you. It's really very, very interesting.